I'm going to remove the tolls on the 407.
Whoa. Doug Ford says he wants to build a tunnel under the 401.
Eglinton LRT, first of all, 13 years I think it's been? We're going to bring in a grocery rebate program.
How much will this program cost? Do you know how difficult it is to find a family doctor?
Oh yeah, this is what's happened to all of us, right?
So what's your plan?
We're going to hire doctors.
But anybody can say they're going to hire doctors. You do karaoke?
Oh gosh, I have been known to do karaoke.
And what song do you do when you do karaoke?
I've been known to do a little Eminem occasionally.
Eminem?
Yeah.
People pay a few $100s every month for car insurance in Ontario. Do you have a plan to fix that?
Doug Ford called this election in the middle of the winter thinking people weren't going to vote. Your vote matters. It has a lot of power.
Ontario NDP leader Marit Stiles, welcome to the Beachy Show.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm super happy to be here.
Well, you've been busy. You've been touring all across the province,
Yeah.
talking to folks.
Yes.
Because you want to become the premier of Ontario.
That's right. Yes.
Why?
Well, I'll say, first of all, Doug Ford quit his job when he called this election a few weeks ago. And so I'm applying for that job. And I really believe that it's time for change. I think Ontarians know that. I think after 7 years rather, of Doug Ford, things are tougher than they've ever been in a long time. We have to do something quick to save our healthcare system, to fight the rising cost of everything, to build the homes that people need. There's a long list, but we need to start to make some change here. And I'm running because I want to give people some hope that we can do that.
And I want to talk about all those things that you have
Yep.
in your platform that you're proposing to the folks.
Yeah.
But you've been the opposition leader for a few years.
Yeah, 2 years. Yeah.
2 years now. So I want to ask you this question.
Yeah.
If you were to grade Doug Ford's performance as premier, what grade would you give him?
I know you're not going to be shocked by this. I'm going to give him a failing grade.
You're going to give him an F.
I am, and I tell you why.
An F plus or an F minus?
I'm going to say an F minus. I don't even give him a lot for effort because I'll tell you, honestly, I feel like cost of housing, rental is up 38% across the province. So in small towns, not just big cities. The cost of groceries, those things that are up so much. But then you look at the loss of family doctors. How few people have a family doctor right now? The emergency rooms that are closing, the hallway healthcare, the state of our schools. Our kids are not getting the support they need in our schools. And we've lost jobs in Ontario, actually, under Doug Ford. He likes to say he's like the big guy who's going to bring back opportunity, but we've actually lost jobs in Ontario. So I came here, more than 30 years ago to Ontario from Newfoundland, where I was born and raised. And I came here for opportunity, and I think a lot of people do. And that's not the Ontario that my young adult daughters are walking into right now. That's not the same province. It's really hard for a lot of people. And a lot of that, it didn't all start with Doug Ford, but it has gotten worse.
So let's get into the things. And let's start off with affordability, because no matter where you go in Ontario, who you talk to, the majority of people are finding it tough.
That's right. Yeah.
Just to make ends meet, point blank, period. But when we speak with people, we are finding that some of the issues people are blaming federal politicians for when they actually land at the foot of the province.
Yeah.
So the first thing I want to talk about is rent.
Yeah, rent. Yeah.
Because we looked at the increase in rents from when Doug Ford came into office in 2018 compared to now. And on average, rents are up anywhere between 45 to 55%, even higher.
Toronto.
Yeah.
Yep. Yes. Shocking, right? If you're renting, it's not shocking because you've seen it.
100%.
Yeah.
What's your plan to fix that?
Yeah. Well, the first thing we have to do is bring back rent control, real rent control, without these loopholes that are all around it. And, stop all those above guideline increases. People out there who rent know that, right? It's called AGIs. And a lot of the big landlords will start to they'll increase your rent a little more all the time. And they say, well, it's because we had to fix this thing or that thing. We got to stop that kind of creeping increase in your rent because as you said, in Toronto, it's 50%. In the rest of the province, it's 38. So it's actually everywhere, but you're right. Toronto, of course, even worse. So real rent control is the answer. And it's extremely important that we do it fast because what I'm seeing is people are losing their homes, right? We know that. And so we want to bring in real rent control right away.
So
to
if you're
prevent
elected,
people. Yep.
like you would do that, what, on like day
Absolutely.
one?
Yeah, that's the first 100 days thing
wow.
for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I don't think we could afford, look, I know we can't afford it to keep going. People are losing their homes. And, if I could, I'd roll it all back too, right? But we can stop it from increasing anymore. And then we're going to have, I know you're going to ask me about some other things, so I'll leave you a little space here, but we have some plans as well to help people out with the cost of other things like food prices.
But before we even get to groceries, I also want to talk about affordable housing.
Yes.
Because everywhere you look, there are people on the streets.
Yeah,
When I was growing up, I remember like you drove down the highways were clean.
Yeah.
You go down the highways now, at every exit, there are folks who look hungry, they're asking for money. It's like a wild switch up.
Yeah.
And people are saying that they can't afford homes. So what's your plan? What's the Ontario NDP's plan for affordable housing?
Yeah, so back in the 90s, like I moved to Ontario 30 years ago. So in the mid 90s, the Conservatives in Ontario and the Liberals actually federally as well, they stopped our building affordable housing. So up until then, we'd been building affordable housing, things like rent geared to income, co-op housing, and then other kinds of deeply affordable stuff like supportive housing where you have wraparound supports for people. And so if you look around the city of Toronto, you find that kind of housing, but not nearly enough of it. It's really hard to get into. And that's because in the mid-90s, they stopped building it. Now, in other provinces, the provinces kept going in some of them. And now every province except Ontario has an agency whose job it is to coordinate the building of truly affordable housing. We need to get back into that. And so we're proposing something called Homes Ontario that would be get the government back into the business of building housing again. And let me be clear, that means like partnering with municipalities, cities like Toronto, and nonprofits, co-op housing, but to build like an assortment of different kinds of options for people. And it's really important because, in Ontario, Doug Ford, now this is the third election that he said we were going to start to build housing, like that Ontario needs housing. We know we do. But the housing he's talking about building isn't the housing I'm talking about building.
What type of housing is he talking about?
I think he's talking about, the only housing he's ever actually, they haven't built housing, that's the truth. But if any housing has been built, it's been luxury condos, right? And actually our housing starts, in other words, the start of construction of housing in Ontario right and now is at the lowest level it's been at since the 1950s. So Doug Ford talks housing, but where are they?
So if you're
that's
elected,
the first thing.
Right, and you were to put your plan in place, how many housing units are we talking about? How many housing units would you build if you're elected?
Okay,
Premier?
so it's the aim is 1.5 million units in 10 years.
Wow,
but that's a large number. That is a large number, but that means also 350,000 of those would be truly affordable housing, so deeply affordable rent geared to income or co-op housing units, which is really important and which is what's really missing in Ontario right now in a big way. And then about 60,000 of those would be what we call supportive housing. So if you think about the folks that are living in encampments right now, or like you've seen in the tents around the city, a lot of those folks, like first of all, we do need shelter space, and I'm glad to see the city of Toronto has some really good moves they're making. Olivia Chow's moving things along in lots of interesting ways, but it's taking time. And the truth is that the solution to homelessness is housing. So you can move people into shelter, but you got to get them a home eventually. And a lot of the folks we're talking about, the problem is there isn't a lot of that supportive housing with wraparound supports for people who are suffering as well with things like mental health and addiction challenges. So, or disabilities, right? So we need to build that kind of housing as well, and it's worth it, right? Like it's worth it to us as a city and a community. And I know that Toronto folks here, they want people to be cared for, but folks also know that, like, I have 2 young adult daughters. They can't afford rent in the city of Toronto right now. There's just no way. They're going to live with us, and we're lucky we have a place that we can accommodate them. But I want them to be able to get out there on their own, and I want them to be able to maybe save a little for the future. And right now, that just is impossible for so many people in the city.
And there's a lot of young people, young adults, millennials who find themselves in that situation. Right. Yeah. What do you say to those folks who are frustrated with life right now?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I'll tell you, I think it's why a lot of people are looking at elections and going, I don't know, It's never going to make any difference in my life, right? I think a lot of people have given up hope. And it's exactly that generation that concerns me, because we shouldn't give up hope. There are things that government can do right now to change things. You look out in British Columbia right now, the NDP government there is building 4 times as much housing as we're building here in Ontario.
So how come
4
they're
times.
getting it right and we're getting it wrong?
Policy and, values. I think, it's an NDP government, and they're prioritizing getting housing built that people can afford. Here in Ontario, Doug Ford has put all of his eggs in the basket of big developers, and he's failed. I mean, look at the Greenbelt. They were trying to carve up the Greenbelt. Doug Ford, he made these deals with these developers.
The Greenbelt scandals when he was caught on camera saying to developers that we're going to sell you this land, but then he told the public he wasn't going to do that.
Yeah, and he did it a few times, right? He said he'd promise Ontarians, I'm never going to touch the Greenbelt.
But he did apologize during the debate.
He did.
Were you surprised about that?
No, he's apologized before. I wasn't surprised. But you know what? I mean...
Do you accept his apology, though?
I accept it. But you know what? The apology to me is no good unless you're actually going to start to stop lying to people about other things, start actually building the housing we need. Not only did he try to do something which I think was, frankly, corrupt. And he's being investigated by the RCMP right now during this election.
That is true. The police are investigating all of that craziness.
Yeah. So, I mean,
scandal.
It is a scandal. And he's in the middle of that. And so, he apologized for it. But, what really makes me angry about it is not only that they lied to people and that, I think it was, it's corruption, obviously. But it's also that, he hasn't gone ahead and actually gotten the other housing built. So that was supposed to be. He kept saying, oh, no, I'm doing this to build housing. Well, where's the housing? Where are the houses? It's not happening. And we cannot afford 4 more years of this. It's not getting better. And they don't actually have a plan to build housing. They have a plan to try to make things easier for big developers. But look, developers aren't building right now. We need to and they're certainly not building affordable housing. We have to prioritize affordable housing for people.
If you're elected and your housing plan goes into motion and we see all this housing get built, there's one thing about getting people into homes, but what about having food in those homes, right? Grocery prices have gone through the roof. It's been a national conversation. Mm-hmm. Everybody says they're going to fix it. Do you have a plan to help offset the rising cost of groceries? Because people need to eat.
We know it's a crisis and people can't feed themselves. So I'm going to do a couple things about this, and I'm pretty excited about it. Actually, I think it's a real game changer. We're going to bring in a grocery rebate program. So we're going to.
What's a grocery rebate program?
So it means that every month, if you're in a lower middle income bracket, okay, which a lot of people are, income wise, you're going to qualify to get some money back every month.
How
to
much?
Help you. So a family of 4 would get about $120 in the mail a month, a check.
Okay.
To help to offset the cost. So that's really money in your pocket that you can spend on food. And look, Doug Ford just sent out those $200 checks, that one-time $200 check that came out conveniently around the time of the election.
I did notice that.
Isn't that interesting?
I did notice that. I was like, well, this timing is interesting. But I still deposited the check.
Hey, look, and
but I didn't need that, though. I'm going to be frank. I didn't need that.
Right. And, that's the thing, right? It's I'm not who got that check? Galen Weston got that check, right? Galen Weston got a $200 check. I got that $200 check. We don't need that. That needs to go to people who really need it. And I think Ontarians know that. I hear it all the time from people. So this is geared toward people who need it.
So what would be the income threshold? Because you're saying middle income families. What's that income?
Yeah. So it's if you think about it, it's based on, and it will change a little, right? But it will be based on that median, where people are at in terms of their income. So, and that's higher than it used to be, right? I can't remember the exact number, but it's a lot higher than it, you would think. But a lot of people, 4 million Ontarians, are going to qualify for that rebate this year. And that's because everybody is earning so much less than they're actually having to spend on groceries.
How much will this program cost?
We have costed it out. It will depend a little bit because some of it's going to depend on where grocery prices are at when we come in, which hopefully will be soon. But it's based on how much a basket of groceries costs today versus what it cost 7 years ago. So that may shift a little, but I can tell you this. it's about the same amount that it costs that we're subsidizing that Austrian luxury spa down at Ontario Place.
So is this a few $1 billion we're talking?
Yeah, a few $1 billion. That luxury spa, that mega spa that Doug Ford is his vanity project down at Ontario Place, is costing Ontario taxpayers $2.2 billion. That's $400 per household in the entire province. That's outrageous.
So are you saying, like, if he didn't move forward with that spa that they're building at Ontario Place now, that money...
We're going to cancel that deal.
You're going to cancel that deal?
We're going to cancel that deal. Yeah, we're going to cancel that deal. Yeah.
How are you going to cancel it? Because aren't the papers locked, signed, and all the things?
No, I mean, there might be a penalty fee, but we're going to get it done because it's not going to cost as much as this terrible deal that he's negotiated. I mean, let's be clear. Like, how many times can you imagine, like, a big company, which is, first of all, was broke when they got this contract, getting subsidized by the government for billions of dollars for a project that, like, not everybody is going to benefit from. Most people won't be able to use that because it's going to be expensive. And nobody asked for it. And it's a 99-year lease, for goodness sake. It's ridiculous. It's a terrible deal. So we're going to tear up that deal. We may have to pay a penalty, but it will be worth it, I think, to people of Ontario. And I'm prepared to do that. I think, it's a bad deal, and it's just one of many bad deals that Doug Ford has made that have really cost Ontarians.
All right. So we talked about affordability.
Yeah.
There's another thing that impacts a lot of young people, and that's car insurance.
Yeah. Yes.
Car insurance premiums in Ontario are so high.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for a lot of people who pay high car insurance premiums in Ontario, they look at, like, Quebec, where it's just a few $100s for the entire year.
Yes.
And people pay a few $100s every month for car insurance in Ontario. Do you have a plan to fix that?
We've put forward legislation numerous times over the last, 8 years or so, more than that actually, to crack down on things like postal code discrimination by auto insurance companies, and we'll be moving forward with all of that again because there's a lot of things that government can actually do, and I think that's a great example. People have to ask themselves. So what do you
do if you're elected premier?
Yeah, so we're going to crack down on postal code discrimination by.
So that means, like, if
companies.
You live in Brampton, you're not going to be paying 5 times as much as somebody who lives in. I don't know, Whitby? Because
it is discrimination, right? It's based on nothing more than where you live, and that is discrimination. So we're going to crack down on that. My MPP from Humber River Black Creek, his name is Tom Rakocevic. He's done a lot of work on this. He's amazing. By the way, we've also been digging into, we don't have a proposal on this yet, but we've been digging into things like, cell phone charges and things like that too, which are also outrageous. And one of the things that we can do, which affects a lot of these issues, is put in place a consumer watchdog in Ontario to watch things like price gouging by the big grocery retailers, why certain companies are charging higher fees than other companies, and actually have a watchdog whose job it is to look at that, to come up with mechanisms and policies so that, for example, if a grocery retailer, like a big grocery store, is going to raise the prices on something, they have to actually post why they're doing that, over a certain amount. Things like that can be disincentives. It's time that consumers had a government that was actually on their side and didn't think it was just their right to raise prices unilaterally all the time.
But what could that watchdog do? So, let's say they see, a grocery store, taking advantage of a community, raising prices astronomically.
Yeah.
And then, so this watchdog sees that. What could they do to
Well, some
stop
of it will include measures that we know already, like posting. So if you're going to I can't remember what the percentage was, but you're increasing your grocery price, that price of that bread by whatever, then you have to post it, just like you do when you're posting about a sale. I'm advertising a sale, but I'm also going to explain to you now why this price is going up. That's a disincentive, and we will be able to find those retailers, and the watchdog will also be able to suggest to the legislature measures that we can take to further enforce that.
Okay. When we do talk about driving, traffic is a mess.
Yeah.
It's just the biggest headache for anybody who lives. I'm just going to say it doesn't matter where you live in Ontario. But especially if you live in the Greater Toronto area, you better pack some mental health because the
Yeah.
effects of traffic
it's
on
brutal.
people's mental health is crazy.
Yeah.
Doug Ford says he wants to build a tunnel under the 401. A lot of people are like, that's an interesting idea. What are your thoughts on that idea?
Well, first of all, I think it's a.
Do you call
I think it's a. I do. I do. I think it's fake. I think it's like another fantasy project of his, or a vanity project. But having said that, I think he fully intends to go there. I think it's a terrible idea. I've talked to engineers who specialize in these things who say this is just like the worst idea. It's not possible.
So how would you fix traffic then?
Well, so this is what I find so interesting is Doug Ford's always like, oh, we're going to build a tunnel under the 401. I mean, my goodness, it's going to cost there's been many estimates, anywhere from 80 to 100 billion dollars to do that over a decade, right? Like, why not look at what we could actually do right now? So,
like open the Eglinton
example.
LRT, because that thing is sitting
Okay,
there.
so
No, because
first
honestly, because people around
absolutely.
Eglinton email us all the time, but like,
Yeah.
what's going on?
I know. It goes right through the top of my riding, actually. Eglinton LRT, first of all, 13 years I think it's been in building that thing. First, I already said the first thing I'm going to do when we're elected, I'm going to tell people when that is opening. Because I don't know what the big secret is, but people deserve to know. We've waited 13 years.
Do you know anything that we don't know? Like, can
I
you
don't
fill us
right
in?
now. I mean, Metrolinx has hidden that.
Yeah.
Doug Ford even gave the former CEO of Metrolinx a bonus. So his salary was bumped up to $1 million a year when he refused to share when that would open. I mean, it's bizarre. But look, we Doug Ford likes to announce these big transit projects, but we don't see anything ever opening. And meanwhile, it's people here who are waiting for those buses, those trains, that transit that never opens, right? On the tunnel though, like, because I am conscious, like people are stuck in bumper to bumper traffic on the 401. We got to get people home to their families faster.
So how are you going to do that?
I'm going to remove the tolls on the 407.
Whoa.
I know. Now, here's the thing. 407, we built the 407. Ontarians, we built the 407. It belongs to you. Taxpayer dollars built that thing. And the moment the Conservatives, right after the Conservatives were elected back in the 90s, they privatized it. They sold it off. But it is still our highway. And there's been many opportunities for governments, Liberal and Conservative, to actually negotiate with that company. I had proposed earlier that we remove the tolls on trucks to start to relieve some of the congestion, move some of the trucks off the 401 onto the 407. I think we should still start with that. That'll be the first thing we do. But we're going to negotiate with the company to remove the tolls. It's time.
How much do you think that would cost?
Well, I mean, there will be a cost for sure, but I think it'll cost a whole lot less than a fake tunnel under the 401 or
the
any
407 is
number
always
of these
empty.
things. It's empty, and like I always say, you could land a plane on that highway, and somebody actually did. It is that empty. So yeah, in fact, we announced this right before the election was called because it drives me crazy too, right? To see it sitting there so empty. And so when Doug Ford says, oh, we're going to build this thing, or we're going to do that, then we're going to build this tunnel under the 401 in decades from now. Why not do something, spend some of that money right now to relieve the congestion today, get people home to their families so that by the time September rolls around and people are trying to get, home to their kids, we know that they can get there faster and they're not going to have to worry a lot less about that.
All right. Let's talk about education.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
I want to start off with students in post-secondary.
Yeah.
Because university kids, I'm just going to use them as an example,
Yes.
they pay some really high tuition. They pay the highest tuition in all of Canada, here in Ontario.
Yeah.
Again, I'm going to use the example of Quebec.
Yeah.
The average tuition cost in Quebec is less than half of what we pay in Ontario. Why is that? And do you have a plan to fix that?
Yeah. So, I mean, the reason that, Quebec has those tuitions, the lower tuitions for Quebec residents, is because they actually invest in post-secondary education, colleges and universities. The government pays more of the costs of it, right? Which is what we should be doing here. In fact, Ontario has the lowest investment in post-secondary education, colleges and universities of any province in the country by a long shot. So even though tuitions have been frozen for a while, they never really made up that difference for the colleges and universities. And what we're starting to see, and that's part of why, a lot of colleges, not everybody, but became very reliant on the international students and the crisis that we've seen there.
So are you going to increase funding to these
Exploited.
universities
Yes,
and colleges?
I am going to increase funding to the colleges and universities significantly.
Does that mean tuition would go down, or is it just going to stay frozen?
I think that, tuition will probably stay the same for now because honestly, we are in such a state. But I will tell you this, we are going to take the interest off of the OSAP, so existing, get rid of that. And then we're going to convert the loans into grants, which is a huge thing. Yeah, so that's a big change. And that's something that students have been calling for a long time. So we want to get that done. But, we're really in a crisis. I see it especially in other towns and cities around the province, but universities and colleges are cutting programs. And they're cutting programs in areas where we really need people to be trained up and educated for our economy. It's going to have a devastating impact. I see it everywhere I go. And if we don't do something fast, we are going to be so far beyond, not just everywhere else in Canada, but so far behind everybody else in the world. Like, we are falling behind. And so when, I know we're probably going to talk about this, but when Doug Ford talks about, fighting back and building our economy, and I'm going to protect every job, and, I don't buy it, because really what's happening is our education system is failing. It's failing our students. It's failing families. It's failing businesses and industry who need people to be, educated and skilled workers to be qualified to work out there as our economy evolves. And we're failing. We're failing on all of those fronts, and we will continue to fall behind the rest of the world if we don't do something fast. So that's my commitment.
We hear from a lot of nurses who say the healthcare system is failing.
Yeah.
We hear from people who go to hospitals and are waiting in emergency rooms for hours and hours and hours. Yeah. Healthcare is a provincial responsibility.
It is. It absolutely is.
What is your plan to fix what's going on in the hospitals across Ontario?
Yeah, so, the healthcare crisis started, I would say, we saw it sort of start under the previous Liberal government. We got hallway healthcare, they call it, right? People being treated in the hallways of the hospitals.
Which is wild. We pay so much in taxes.
Wild, yeah.
Nobody should ever have to go through that.
No, and I think probably most people have a story. I have a story. My mom and my dad, who are in their 80s now, both had some illnesses over the last year. Both ended up in hospitals. Hallway healthcare, I've experienced it directly. What I find so tragic is to think not only are the people being treated there in the hallway, with little to no privacy, but also, those healthcare workers, they have to go and deliver sometimes some pretty awful news to people in those situations. That's just devastating for everyone. And it shouldn't have to be like this. So
how do you fix this if you're elected premier?
Yeah, so the Conservatives have, I would say, thrown gasoline on this problem. It's gotten a lot worse. A lot of this it comes down to properly investing in healthcare, certainly, but investing in the right way. So we've got to stop bleeding our healthcare dollars into things like private clinics and private nursing agencies.
So you would shut those down?
I would definitely, look, private nursing agencies exist because nurses right now are so disrespected by its government. The Conservatives took nurses and other healthcare workers to court to suppress their wages, during the pandemic, when we were, all calling them our heroes, and they were, treated them so badly. And nurses have started to leave. They feel overwhelmed. They're burned out. The government isn't doing anything to support them. I'm going to bring in what they're asking for, which is nurse-patient ratios, which means, a nurse is assigned, you expect that a nurse is seeing this many patients per nurse in any shift. They did that in BC. It's helped a lot. We've done this in other provinces. It's helped a lot. So things like that bring back some respect and better work balance for nurses and for other healthcare workers, that's a key piece, because we're losing them. And every time we lose one of those nurses, we're putting money into private agency nurses. And I don't blame those nurses for going to work for private agencies at all, because they get paid better, they get a bit more flexibility and stuff, but it's extremely expensive to the system. I'd rather see those dollars invested into the system, treating those workers well, making sure they're given the respect they deserve for the extremely important work they do. So that's a big piece of it. And the other piece of it is family doctors. Because 2.5 million Ontarians don't have a family doctor.
Way too many people don't have family doctors.
Right? Even here in the city of Toronto, where 100%. That never used to be a problem.
Do you know how difficult it is to find a family doctor?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And like a lot of us, my family doctor's probably, I haven't asked her about this lately, but she's probably getting close to retirement. And where do I go next? This is what's happening to all of us, right?
So what's your plan?
We're going to hire doctors. And that sounds like something
But anybody can say they're going to hire
saying that.
doctors, yeah.
You got to put some money behind it, but you also have to look at, they have a very high administrative paperwork burden on family doctors. And when doctors tell you, I want to see patients, that's what I was trained to do. So we're going to, right away, one of the things we're going to do is take away some of that paperwork, connect them with administrative support, family health teams, that they can move some of that off their plate so they can see more patients and do less paperwork. That's something that doctors are asking us for. We've proposed it to the Conservatives under Doug Ford. They voted against it numerous times. I don't know why. It makes a lot of sense to me. So modernizing things a bit that way. And then we have to create more spaces in our family, in our faculties. Like we have to create more family medicine spaces, more residencies. That's a government thing. Government has to invest in that to create.
So how many
those
spaces would you create?
Well, our
the NDP
plan
were
is
elected?
we have to hire 3,500 family doctors.
And how long would it take you to do that?
It's going to take a few years to get that going. But we know that based on what we've seen, we can get it there in the next 4 years. I will also say a big part of that is more what we call integrated health teams, where you have lots of different healthcare professionals working, again, together to support each other. Really important. And that paperwork thing is something you can start to do right away, which again will help to connect more people right away to family doctors.
Use one word to describe Donald Trump.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I don't think I could say it.
You can say anything here.
And
we can bleep it out, don't worry.
Hurtful.
Why?
Which is a pretty gentle word in many ways, but because I think what he's doing is hurtful. Everything he does is hurtful. Everything he does is aimed at hurting someone. And I think really unnecessarily, like hurting people that are already pretty vulnerable, and it's scary, right? Because I think we will be impacted by a lot of this. I think it's selfish what he's doing. But that's like, again, it hardly, he doesn't really capture it all. I could say a lot worse. He's a megalomaniac, and he's throwing a lot of policies and things out there that are very hurtful all at one time to kind of shock everyone. So that those of us who want to maybe help people or stop some of this don't know which direction to go in first. And that includes some of the threats that he's made against us in Canada and in Ontario.
If you're elected Premier, how would you protect the people of Ontario from Doug? I was going to say from Doug.
I've done that
from
before.
Donald Trump.
Yeah, I've done that before. How would I do that? Well, I feel like there's look, we continue to be close allies to the United States, right? I mean, we're right there. They're a really important trade partner. And I certainly I know that there are many governors and, of course, many Americans who do not support the direction that Donald Trump is taking. So I know we can continue to have, and we have to have a good trade relationship with them. But I think we have to look at other friends. I think we have to look at our other democratic allies around the world, bring those, get a little closer to those relationships, look at other trade relationships. I think it's really, really important that we not be as reliant as we are on the United States in the future. I want to look at what I call it tariff-proofing Ontario. That means, again, building those other relationships around the world with other democratic countries that, frankly, he's trying to pick us off one by one, right? We share some things in common. But also build our self-reliance. I love the way that Canadians and folks here in Ontario are responding to this by saying, you know what? I'm going to start buying Ontario. I go to the grocery store, I'm going to look really carefully at where those apples come from. Everything comes from. And I'm going to try my best to buy Ontario, to buy Canadian, not to buy American. I appreciate what people are doing. Your government needs to do the same thing. And in Ontario, we spend a lot of money on things. Like, for example, the Ontario line, the vehicles that they're using for that. Usually we put some requirements around a certain percentage of these contracts goes to Canadian or Ontario companies. Doug Ford did away with that requirement for the Ontario line. He gave that contract to Hitachi, who are building those cars in the United States. Those should have been built in a plant. Probably Thunder Bay would have gotten the contract. They built a lot of the GO Train cars and the TTC.
They beat the streetcars, right?
They build the streetcars.
Yeah.
So, that was an opportunity. to invest our taxpayer dollars, your money, into creating more jobs and opportunities here. And I mean, that's what we should be doing. And we should be doing it every time we have an opportunity to spend money on every contract and every service that we purchase. And we should use that opportunity to build up our capacity here to be self-reliant. And so I think that's really, really important. It's just one or two things that we can do. And then I really believe we have to have a strong and united all Canada approach.
Marit, I thank you for explaining your platform. I do have a few fun questions I want to ask you just to get to know you. But before I do want to address one thing that we heard a lot from some of our readers.
Yeah.
And it's in relation to the controversy around Sarah Jama.
Yes.
A lot of Jama's supporters, felt betrayed by you and the NDP, the Ontario NDP. Mm. Can you explain to them what it is that she did wrong that warranted her to be dismissed from the party?
Her candidacy was a decision. She went through the same process for this election as every candidate goes through, and our provincial director made that decision, and I support his decision. But look, we are a team in our caucus that have a very important job to do, which is to hold Doug Ford and his government to account every single day, and that means that we have to be very united and very strong in how we approach that. I'm really proud of the position that we've taken as a party, both federally and provincially, in supporting the people of Palestine, in being the first party to call for a ceasefire. I think we've been on the right side of these issues. And I feel they're issues that matter to me as well. And her being removed from our caucus doesn't really have anything to do with that. But, again, we are a team. We have to work like a team. And anybody who's approved to run for the NDP goes through the same process.
Do you regret how it all went down?
I've said before, I certainly do, think that there were things that we could have done better, for sure. But I also believe that we have a really, really important and huge responsibility to the people of Ontario. I think if Doug Ford and the Conservatives continue on the way that they are right now, we will see so many more people lose their homes, so many more people struggling if he gets reelected. And I'm very focused right now on how we elect New Democrats and flip those blue ridings to orange.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, Marit, here we go.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite artist? And I'm judging.
Oh, jeez. I've really enjoyed listening to The Weeknd on these. I really like his music, and we've been listening to a lot of it as I kind of ramp myself up for things like debates.
Are you going to go to his concert?
I don't think I could get a ticket, but I would love to go to his concert. And I've also have to say, we've been listening to a lot of kind of throwback, Shania Twain and stuff like that over the last few weeks. I don't know why.
What's your favorite Shania song?
Oh man, I Feel Like a Woman.
Let's hear it.
I'm not singing it. You don't want to go there. I do have karaoke songs, but yeah,
you do karaoke?
I have been, I have been known to do karaoke.
And what song do you do when you do karaoke?
I've been known to do a little Eminem occasionally.
Eminem?
Yeah.
Out of here. Are you serious?
Yeah. Anyways.
Are you a Nicki fan?
I don't know if I should answer that. Yeah, okay. Sure, I don't know. No, I don't know.
You know Nicki Minaj.
Oh, Nicki Minaj.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah? What's your favorite track from Nicki Minaj?
I don't know. Don't tell me that. No, actually, I should say, I like Nicki Minaj, but I couldn't name a song. Okay. I am, I'm like one of those people. My daughters will tell you, Mom, you don't listen to enough music. And I think it's true. I probably listen to more podcasts and stuff than I do, especially the last few years than I do music, unfortunately.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Favorite city in Ontario or town?
I went to Paris, Ontario a few times in the last while, and I really liked it. It's really pretty. But I actually really love Thunder Bay.
Oh, why?
Thunder Bay. I like industrial. I kind of find it interesting to go to big industry towns, but I also really love the location of Thunder Bay. Is so beautiful on the shores of Lake Superior, and then you have this big mountain, the Sleeping Giant that you see. It's pretty amazing. I feel very lucky that I've gotten to go there a bunch of times over the last few years. Yeah, it's really, really cool. And they also have a really good music scene, very interesting music scene there.
Do you watch reality TV?
I do. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Not as, I mean, again, not so much lately.
Yeah.
But I do like, I do watch, I do. And I've got
What's
a
your
couple
guilty
of specials.
pleasure?
I like Canada's Drag Race. I like with
Canada's
Brooklyn
Ultimate
Heights.
Challenge. Do you watch Canada's Ultimate Challenge?
No, I have not.
Well, you better. That's my show.
I'm sorry. Oh my gosh. I obviously wasn't well briefed for this. No, I'm just kidding. I will say I also really like, and this is when I watch with my kids. We watched
Housewives?
Well, no, but they are very big fans of Housewives Salt Lake City. That's theirs. That's their favorite. I watch Love on the Spectrum.
I've never seen that one. No.
Oh, it's great.
What's it about?
People with autism.
Yeah.
And dating.
Yeah.
And it's really good. And there's an Australian version and an American version. I personally prefer the Australian version, but you know.
Maybe they should do a Canadian version.
They should do a Canadian version. Yeah, it's really great. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last question.
Yeah.
Out of all of the other major party leaders, Bonnie Crombie, Doug Ford, Mike Schreiner.
Yeah.
If you had to take one out for a drink, who would it be?
Oh, Mike Schreiner.
Oh, why?
Yeah. Well, I think we share a lot in common. Definitely. I get along.
Would you
with
invite
him.
Bonnie or Doug?
Yeah, and you know what? I will say this. I would love to actually. I might change my answer. I would take Doug Ford out for a beer or drink. I don't think he drinks actually, but like take him out because there's a lot of things I'd like to talk to him about actually, and I think he needs to sit down and listen a little bit to what we're hearing from people in Ontario.
All right.
Yeah.
Marit, is there anything else you want to tell the people?
I want to say to people, you know, the reason I ran for leader of the NDP a couple years ago was because I was really upset about the low voter turnout in the last provincial election. And I don't blame people for not voting. I just think I think politicians like us, we need to earn your vote. But I want you to know that there's hope, right? Don't give up on the process and the potential here because your vote matters. This election, Doug Ford called this election in the middle of the winter thinking people weren't going to vote. Your vote matters. It has a lot of power. We can change things and we can elect a government that's on your side and a premier on your side, and I'll be on your side.
All right. Thank you so much, Marit Stiles, Ontario NDP leader. Oh my gosh, I never asked. Oxtail or Currygo?
Oh, oxtail.
A woman after my own
I mean,
heart.
I will say, I grew up with goats. I grew up on a little farm in Newfoundland, and
Did
we
you
had
really?
goats, so I don't eat a lot of goat.
Okay.
I have.
You've just seen too much
I
with
like
the goats.
goats.
Yeah.
But oxtail, 100%.
Okay.
I love oxtail. Yeah,
All right. Marit Stiles, thank you so much for joining us on the BG Show,
Thank
and
you.
good luck on February 27th.
Thank you.
Hey, it's BG, and I want to know, what do you think about what you just watched? Make sure to drop your thoughts in the comments below, but also make sure to check out even more great content like this video and this video over here. And if you haven't subscribed to the Brandon Gona Show, do so right now by clicking this button right here.